Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast with Christine Luken, the financial dignity coach. In this podcast, we help you recover a positive and peaceful relationship with your personal finances. We do this by bringing together wise money management with emotional intelligence. Join us for this journey where we navigate our relationship with money as Christine Luken draws from years of experience and guest experts to help you get to the root of your money issues.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast. I am your host, Christine Luken. Today's episode is Costly College Mistakes. And I'm honored to welcome my good friend and special guest, Dan Bisig, aka Dan the College Man. Dan Bisig is a college admissions and funding expert, the founder of College and Beyond LLC, and the co-author of the College Entrance Game Plan. He is passionate about helping students get into the right college at the right price, pursue the right major, and graduate right on time. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Christine. It's great to be with you today. Thank you.
Hey, so I know we've actually condensed this to fit into the podcast because you and I have done this for private audiences, usually, members of my courses, etc. And we could go for a full-on hour easily. So we've got to get right to the point and dive into these questions because I know parents of high schoolers are dying to know these answers. Dan, you say that the number one mistake that parents make is not having the college money talk before their student's senior year of high school. Why is that such a huge mistake?
Well, I'll tell you, Christine, so often with families, paying for college is a topic that families just don't get around to talking about. I mean, it's kind of like the holidays. The holidays kind of sneak up on us, whether it's, the Christmas holiday and somebody looks at the other person, they go, oh my gosh, next week is Christmas. Well, same kind of thing happens here when it comes to college is they know that they've got to figure out how they're going to pay for college, but they never get around to running the numbers. And more importantly, a lot of times moms and dads don't realize that the dynamics, specifically the price, have dramatically changed since back when they went through it. And so it really does. It sneaks up on them. And then if they wait too long, they deal with this terrible situation where they kept telling their son or daughter, you need to go to college, but they never talked about how we're going to pay for college.
Right.
And what ends up happening a lot of times is that they use this really nasty phrase, which is, if you get into XYZ university, we'll figure it out. Okay. And really what that translates to is we have no idea how we're going to pay for college. And we really don't know if you're going to get into that school. But if you do, we'll do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Most people don't talk about money, period.
They don't. No, that's right. It's a taboo topic, isn't it? I mean, it's something that they don't want to talk about. And in particular, everyone has these grand and glorious ideas about their students and where they can go to school and where they may be able to get in. But they don't understand that the colleges also have a number that they're expecting mom and dad to pay, and that's called your student aid index. And that's why it's really important that families are running their numbers. There are some great tools out there. Actually, one of my favorite tools is the MyCap software, MYCAP. The reason being is because it'll calculate their federal SAI numbers and their institutional. And you may not know, or families may not know, that there's actually two different numbers that exist out there. But you better know it if you're applying to the more selective colleges, because they're absolutely going to expect big things from mom and dad when it comes to paying for school.
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit because you threw out some acronyms there.
Yeah, I know.
I have no idea what those are, so I have a feeling that some other people don't know what those are. So explain what those are and what those numbers actually mean and what goes into that.
Yeah, so let's start first of all with the Federal Student Aid Index number. It's actually brand new this year. It used to be called your Expected Family Contribution.
Yes, I've heard you say that.
You may recognize that, EFC. But now they're calling it the Student Aid Index. And again, it's the dollar amount that colleges expect mom or dad to pay for college. But there's actually two different types of numbers. There's the federal number, which is produced by completing the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. There's been a whole debacle about that this year, in particular with these families that have run into all kinds of challenges with actually getting it finished. But then on top of that, there's about another 200 colleges that require the CSS profile, which is another form of financial aid process. That's used to, again, determine your institutional SAI. So it can get a little confusing, but it's important that you know those numbers up front because, again, those are the dollar amounts that the colleges are expecting you, mom or dad, to be able to pay per year to send your child to college.
Right. Yeah. And then I imagine that most people are unpleasantly surprised.
Oh boy,
by
are
that
they ever.
number.
Yeah, when they run the numbers, a lot of times it rocks their world because they have absolutely no idea how they're going to come up with the amount that the colleges are claiming they should be able to pay to send their son or daughter to college. And yet it's an annual number. And here's the worst thing. With the new federal methodology, they don't even give you a break if you have a second child that's in college. So there used to be this thing called the multi-student discount that existed. That is no longer the case on the federal side. Some institutional or private colleges may give a discount for that second child, but you have to be careful about that. Don't assume anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Well, and I assume that part of the reason why parents avoid that discussion is it's kind of weird to talk to your almost adult kid whose butt you used to powder about your financial situation, right?
You are so right. I mean, again, it really is an awkward conversation to have. And that's why even when families are completing the financial aid forms, it is supposed to be the student doing it. But how many young people do you know that know mom and dad's financial details, their income, their assets, their tax return details? They just don't. And so, it's one of those things where unfortunately families just don't get around to it. They really do avoid the topic and then they end up paying the price, unfortunately.
So let's talk about student loans.
Yeah.
What's a common mistake or misconception that parents of high schoolers have about student loans?
Well, it really is more with mom and dad because there are parents that say, hey, I paid for you to go to kindergarten, grade school, middle school, and high school, and now college is on you. Well, that sounds great. I mean, it sounds like you're really enticing your child to do everything that they can. But the issue is that there's only so much debt that a student can take out in their own name without a job, without a credit score, and without a cosigner. And so to put that into perspective, as a freshman, students can only take out $5,500. As a sophomore, it's $6,500. And then junior and senior year, both, it's $7,500 for a grand total of $27,000. So
Wait. So that is per year. That's not like per semester.
No, that's right. That's per year. That's the maximum that they can take out. So what that translates to is if you've got a child who has high aspirations to go to some of these schools that are, approaching, by the way, $100,000 per year, it's very possible that they're not going to be able to afford that college if the intent is that they're going to do it on their own. And so that's where mom and dad suddenly have to become participants in that process as far as co-signing on some of those loans, if that's the only way that they can pay for college.
Right. Yeah. Well, and, being a co-signer, even if the intent is that the kid is going to pay for it, that still affects the parent's credit score and it affects their ability to borrow. Because if they're going and, they want to buy a different house or they're going to buy a car, I mean, creditors are looking at their total amount of debt and they're looking at their kid's student loan debt as their debt.
They absolutely are. And by the way, let's not forget, the worst thing that can ever happen is that child defaults on that loan. So guess who starts to get the nasty phone calls and the nasty emails and the nasty text? Mom and dad do. And so suddenly the holidays are a little dicey, around that household when it comes to what's going on there. So that's why I say you've always got to be careful, understand what you're getting into. If loans are going to be part of the funding solution, let's make sure that you have reasonable amount of debt that the student is going to take on, not excessive debt. And when I say reasonable, what we're talking about is no more than about 1 times the amount the student is going to earn from their first job. So if they're going to make $40,000, we don't want to have any more than about $40,000 in student loan debt.
Well, and I know that's something that you talk about as well when selecting colleges, that you have to look at the major and what kind of jobs, what sort of earning power is that going to give you? And I know, because you've told me this one before, you've got a horror story about someone who way overpaid for is it a sociology degree?
Sociology and criminology degree. Good memory. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And went to a school for 5.5 years, graduated with $256,178 worth of debt.
Oh my
Now, think
God.
about that. What that means is that they took on as much debt as normally somebody might take on to get their law degree, maybe even part of their medical school, but they got a sociology degree and a criminology degree, undergraduate degrees only. Please don't do that to yourselves. I mean, don't put yourself into that kind of jeopardy, because it just isn't worth it for that type of an outcome.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was getting ready to go to college and my parents had just gotten divorced. I ended up getting a scholarship because of my grades to the local university. And I really had aspirations for going out of state to this university that I thought was really cool. And it was like the college experience. And my parents basically said, no. I said, that school costs 3 times as much. And you want to get an accounting degree. Like, I mean, you can get an accounting degree pretty much anywhere. So, I thought my parents were mean at the time. Now I completely understand. And I know that they made the right decision, because I graduated with no student loan debt. And I never had an employer ask me where I got my accounting degree. They just wanted to know that I had it. So be a smart shopper, parents.
Absolutely be a smart shopper, and also have the tough conversations with your sons and daughters about what they're thinking of studying, because let's not forget, there's a large percentage of students that go to college and change their majors anyway, which is exactly why the national average of graduating from college is 5.5 years. Because they change majors, they've got to maybe start over, they change colleges sometimes. Any number of things like that can really expand and really add up when it comes to the total price tag that you're paying.
Well, if parents haven't saved enough money for college, they should be okay, because their gifted, high-achieving child is going to get a full ride scholarship, right, Dan?
Oh, I'll tell you, Christine, I wish this were the case. Believe me, there are so many families out there that have dynamite kids. The problem is, if you look at the statistics, it's only about 1% of all students that get a full ride scholarship.
Wow.
And so that's why I kiddingly say, you're going to be at a cocktail party or maybe even a graduation party, and someone's going to proudly say, well, my student got a full ride scholarship, when in reality, they got a full tuition scholarship. There's a big difference. And again, there's
what's
nothing
the
wrong.
Difference there?
Well, full ride means that they're covering what's referred to as cost of attendance. So that's tuition, mandatory fees, room and board, books, miscellaneous expenses, and maybe some transportation cost. That's a full ride. Tuition is just that. It's the tuition cost, which, by the way, is usually the most expensive part of the education. So it could be significant dollars. It could be $50,000 or $60,000 at some of these super duper highly rejective colleges. Notice I said rejective, which is really the truth at those selective colleges. But the truth is, you've got to know what you're getting into, and you also have to know what your student is going to qualify for, and also realize that those highly rejective colleges do not give out merit scholarships anyway. They only give out need-based aid. Having just recently visited Dartmouth College, which is an Ivy League school, they just bumped their parent contribution to $125,000. Here's what that means. Mom and Dad, Yeah, but
Oh my
what it
God.
says is if mom and dad, if you make $125,000 per year, they do not expect you to help pay for college. So that's kind of a win, for a school that's 90 plus $1,000 per year. But the point, of that is just realize that the vast majority of colleges out there, they're going to have a component that is based on need, and it's going to be based on what they expect the parents and the student to contribute for their education.
Yeah. Well, and let's dig into some of these scholarships. What types of scholarships are out there? I know you and I have had some interesting discussions about sports and the
Mhm.
sports scholarships. And some of those are so competitive. I mean, it's like it's a percentage of a percentage. It's like 0.2% chance for things like football and basketball and those really popular sports.
Oh, you better believe it. And that's why, when I'm talking to folks where they've got aspirations for their son or daughter to go and play a sport and they're hoping to get money, the first question is, what kind of college are we looking at? Are we looking at Division 1, 2, or 3, or even NAIA? Understanding that Division 1 and 2 give athletic scholarships, Division 3 does not. NAIA, which is the independent schools out there, do as well. But so you got to understand that going in first. Then you got to look at the sport, because truly, if you've got a student, for example, who's doing track versus a student who's playing the blue chip sports, and we're talking about blue chip being, of course, basketball and football, those are where you're going to see the biggest opportunities. But let's say they're doing baseball. Well, if they're throwing a 95 mile per hour pitch and they're a lefty, okay, maybe they'll get a full ride opportunity. But the vast majority of students just get a little carrot. They might get $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 off the total price tag. So you've really got to be careful, and also, most importantly, have a backup plan, because we were talking obviously about career changes. Well, guess what? Sometimes students start a sport and they don't finish playing a sport in college. They don't like the schedule that they've got to follow. They don't like the coach. I mean, any number of things can happen. Even coaching staffs, by the way, can change, and suddenly you're in a bad situation like that.
Or injuries. I mean,
injury, absolutely.
That's a real threat.
Well, and that's why families have to understand that sports scholarships are annual renewable, which means it's at the whim of the coaching staff as to whether or not that student's really going to get it from year to year, So that definitely throws a wrench in it. Now, the difference, if you're going after a different type of merit scholarship, maybe it's based on your talent or your academic abilities, those kinds of scholarships at colleges are golden if you maintain what they're looking for. So if you keep up your grades, if you keep up a full-time status, those kinds of things can really pay off in the long run, when it comes to keeping that scholarship. And they're by far the best because, again, they are annual renewable, but it's pretty good. The chances are pretty good they're going to be able to keep that.
So there are strings attached to some of those.
Oh, there are, absolutely. There's a minimum GPA that you're often going to find with that. It could be that whoever sponsored the scholarship expects you to write a thank you note to them. I've seen it. Maybe you have to do community service to be able to continue to maintain it. It's truly getting down into the weeds and understanding what do you have to do it. However, again, the benefit of that scholarship is that you're getting it every year if you fulfill what they're looking for. That's as compared to private scholarships.
Okay.
So we ought to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, let's talk about it.
All right. And the reason being is because, and you alluded to this just a minute ago too, is how about the Coca-Cola scholarship, where there's over 100,000 students that apply for it? Now, why is that? Because it's a super duper big scholarship. It's like a $25,000 scholarship that a student's receiving. But the thing is, it's a one-time scholarship. So again, you compare that to what they're going to potentially get through college. You can understand why you can put a lot of time and effort into that. And by the way, there's a ton of effort that goes into that particular type of scholarship. But what about all the other small ones that are out there as well? It's kind of like a part-time job.
Dare to enter the Wealthy Woman Book Club, where answers exist to forbidden questions, where women of all ages and income secretly gather, where knowledge is shared, where possibilities are explored, where women claim their power. Dare to stay a spell in the Wealthy Woman Book Club. In this place, we lift each other up. In this place, we start dreaming again. In this place, we see financial miracles. In this place, we grow through the glory and the failure. In this place, we step into a new identity. Dare to champion the Wealthy Woman Book Club. We're creating a future where women are financially empowered across the globe. We're creating a future where our daughters stand on equal financial footing with our sons. We're creating a future where we purchase with our principles rather than price tags. We're creating a future where we use the power of money for the benefit of people and the planet. Welcome to the Wealthy Woman Book Club. Dare to come in, woman. Come in. Join us at wealthywomanbookclub.com.
Well, that may be a good part-time job for your student.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what if you put in, let's use a smaller number. Let's say that you're going after a $1,000 scholarship and you put 2 hours into writing an essay and completing the application. And if you get it, that's a pretty good ROI on your time, isn't it? I mean, $500 an hour, I'd
Yeah.
take that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good one.
So, what are some of the mistakes that you see families make when it comes to picking a college for their child?
Without a doubt, it's listening to their friends, relatives, and acquaintances who all have the best of intentions. But what they do is that they're giving them ideas of colleges that somebody else has attended. Maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's, a sibling, maybe it's just a friend down the road and the success that they had. So that's the number one thing. And again, those kinds of conversations take place at sporting events, they take place at family get-togethers. And it's not that they've got any bad intentions. They're just trying to help the student, but often they don't know, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. They don't know the financial dynamics of that family. They also don't know the academic dynamics of that particular student when it comes to it, and or what they may be interested in. But here's the biggie is ranking services. Things like U.S. News and World Reports.
But those aren't legit?
Well, here's the problem, Christine. They started those back in the 80s. And I want to give you an example of just one college, which was Northeastern University up in Massachusetts. Prior to them kind of figuring out the formula, they were predominantly known as a commuter college. And then the president of that university got a hold of the behind-the-scenes formula understanding of what it took to increase their rankings, within the system. And he figured it out, and he started gaming the system, and now that school is in the top 100 in the country. So it's a game. And quite frankly, there's stuff in it that I don't think you or I or any of your listeners would care about. Like, do I really care what my peer institutions think about me?
Probably not.
Probably not. What I care about is how much debt is my student graduating with? How much of a job opportunity does my student have coming out of college? Those kinds of things.
Well, and I know, some of the things that you talk about is, it doesn't just need to be a good fit financially. Like, yes, of course, that's one of the main things, but there are other factors to consider. And what are those intangible things? Because if you don't consider those when you're making the decision, that can cost you money down the line if your kid decides that they hate that school and they want to switch schools, and then they've got to retake classes because some didn't transfer, and then they've got to go an extra semester and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, you are so right. That's why there are really four pillars that I believe every family needs to run on, which is, again, you said it, it needs to be financially the right fit for the family. By the way, both for mom and dad and the student. One of the things that kills me is when mom and dad, again, just give their student the green light to apply wherever they want to, and at the end of the day, there's this huge deficit that comes up that they've got to suddenly figure out, oh, I guess I'm going to go sell a kidney because that's the only way I'm going to be able to pay for college. Or, hey, your little sister gets to go to the community college because we spent all the money on you to go to, this fantastic school. But so financially fit, academically fit, and that one might sound interesting to you, but the reason is there are students out there that are high flyers. I mean, they are valedictorians. Just these fantastic students. That is until they discover when they go to one of these super selective colleges that they are suddenly in the middle, and it's really hard for them to accept that. I mean, it really, really is. I've had these conversations with families that have hired me after the fact to come in and talk to them and how can we help the student rebuild themselves because they kind of took a hit with that. So financially, academically, socially is a hard one because the best way, of course, to kind of check that out is if you can go to a college when it's in session, maybe sit in on a class. Maybe the student's going to get involved in Greek life or something like that, but it truly is all about how is that student going to get a sense of, can this be my home away from home in the future? Okay. And then geographically, this really hit home because of COVID. When COVID happened, there were these families that had these kids all across the United States, and suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
They can't get home, they're stuck at school, or they're at home and they're doing this online coursework. And so it really became an issue. But there's another part of that equation, which is how easy is it going to be for your student to be able to get home for events? Birthdays, family get-togethers, all those kinds of things.
Well, and I guess it also depends on their field of study. There are obviously certain geographic locations that are known for certain things. If they want to work in Silicon Valley because they're into tech or filmmaking or something like that, they're probably going to want to go to a school out in California because that's where the job opportunities are, and that's where the co-ops are.
Yeah, that's really true. Here's another example. Where we live, there aren't a lot of oceans. There's not a big body of water. And so if you've got aspirations of getting into marine science or marine biology, you're gonna need to go to the coast. Go to one of these schools that's out there that specializes in that. Whether that's South Carolina, North Carolina, even up further northeast, but definitely down in, say, the Florida areas. So you're absolutely right. There are certain things that can drive a student to go to particular areas, when they're considering these schools.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of circle back about what happened at the beginning of this year with the rollout of the new FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. What was that whole debacle? Is it still affecting people? Like, what do people need to know if they're going to file for that, in the next wave? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking about that because it has indeed been a debacle. In my 18 years of practicing and working with families, and I've always focused on the funding side as well as the admission side of the college process. This is the first time I've ever seen anything as messed up as this rollout was. So the federal government decided, actually, it occurred all the way back in December of 2020, that the legislation was passed that they were going to simplify the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It was actually called the FAFSA Simplification Act. Well, I got to tell you something. This year was anything but simple. And in fact, as we sit here and speak today, the colleges are just now getting the data points. And so what that means is that they opened it up finally on December the 30th, and it was a sporadic opening of the software. Then they started having issues with it. Right around March, they discovered that there were issues where 20% of the households had the wrong tax information that had been uploaded. So So and that was only part of it. Then there were issues with, for example, signatures that showing that people hadn't signed the documentation when in reality they had. Because the one difference this year was that there was a student section that had to be signed off by the student, and there was a parent section that had to be signed off on. And so the system had some glitches in it that was claiming that people didn't do that. You would have one family that pops up and it asks questions about their assets, another family where it doesn't, just randomly. And so that's why it's been unbelievable. As I mentioned, we're in the process right now where they're finally putting these financial aid offers out, but there's a lot of kids sitting on the sidelines right now trying to figure out whether or not the financial aid offers they receive are going to put them in a position to be able to afford the colleges that they apply to and the ones that they really want to go to. So it's a mess still.
Well, when the government says they want to, quote, simplify things, warning bell should go off, right?
Oh, yeah. Run away. Absolutely run away. But I want to tell you a real truth that's really scary about this. According to the most recent statistics, there were about 10 million fewer students that completed the FAFSA this year. So the question is, what the heck happened to all those kids? Why did they suddenly not complete the FAFSA, or did they wait to go ahead and do it? And maybe they're going to do it here at the end. I don't know. There's a lot of open questions that we're going to have to see. And then that really leads to, will it be back on track to open the way it's supposed to on October the 1st for the next group of students, which would be the 24-25 class, that's coming in? It's hard to say.
Fingers crossed.
Let me go back and actually, it's not the 24-25, it's the 25-26 class that's going to be rolling in. So anyway, lots of unknowns.
Well, obviously, this is a complicated process. And this is something where, the parents definitely need to be communicating with the kids. And there's something that you have said that it's probably the most quoted line I have from you. And that is, parents, do not allow your 16 to 18-year-old child to make a financial decision for your family that's going to have a 5 to 6 figure impact on your family's household.
Christine, you're so right. It's such a big deal that there's communication going on, that a family's having what I call the college money talk, that literally they're sitting down and that they're giving the student a real idea of the way things are, because it truly can be catastrophic. I mean, it can put a family in a no-win situation in the spring of the senior year when suddenly the student is sitting there and they're discovering that this school expects them to come up with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 per year when mom and dad have maybe $10,000 or $20,000 sitting in the bank. And it really is a no-win situation at that point in time, because are you going to suddenly tell your student, no, you can't go to that school? I mean, it's really, really hard.
Yeah. Well, before we close out today, I would love for you to tell our audience how you help parents and their students work through this process, what sort of things, you're holding their hand through. And of course, what's the ideal time for them to start working with you?
Ideally, what's going to happen is that families are going to start working with me in about their sophomore to, at a minimum, their junior year. Because the truth of the matter is, there's only certain things that we can get done based on the amount of time that we have. And so I love working with families that have, that are forward thinking, that have a student who is proactive. I'd identify that there's really 3 types of students that I see out there. There are inactive, really hard to get them moving. Reactive, which is they just need a little nudge to keep going the right way, and then proactive, those kids that are kind of in the driver's seat and they're doing everything they can. And so I truly believe that it's a matter of starting as soon as possible, depending upon the selectivity of the schools that they're considering, and then giving the students everything that they need so that they really are designing the best presentation of themselves to the colleges and universities. Because it's easy to get caught up in the process, but it's also about using your voice, sharing all the things that you've done, all those kinds of great things. So very first meeting with the students is traditionally talking to them about their college and career aspirations, what they want to do, what they want to study. If they don't know what they want to study, then I give them a career assessment. Mom and dad, right off the bat, we're having the college money talk. So we're going to run their numbers. We're going to run that old student aid index for them, so that then we can sit down with the student and have a conversation about that as well. Because I want to make sure at the end of the day that we help to get everybody across the finish line successfully.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate all the wisdom that you've shared today. You are my absolute go-to expert for all things college. And, I've referred friends, family, and clients to you with full confidence that you're going to take amazing care of them. We're going to link up your college scholarship and financial aid course. So, parents, maybe don't need Dan's one-on-one assistance, but this scholarship course is amazing. It's low cost. You're going to get some amazing value out of that. And also you have a free college money report that tells parents the 3 critical things they need to know before they start entering this crazy college funding maze. So we're going to link all that up for you in the show notes.
Beautiful. And then also, Christine, for your listeners, is a thank you for us doing this and also for them listening. I'd like to give you a discount code that they can use for that DIY scholarship course, which is all lowercase and all scrunched together, Christine 50, and that will give them 50% off of that course.
Holy moly.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a no-brainer for them to look at that. And the nice thing is there's videos and workbooks that are in that process that they can utilize to go searching for those outside private scholarships.
Awesome. Fabulous. All right, Bill. I know you've been lurking in the background.
Yeah, I've been lurking. I've been having flashbacks in the background. Okay, because we have two adult children who've thankfully completed college, gone on to become productive adults, all on their own. So that's the good news. Dan, one of the things I couldn't help thinking about, though, and I don't know if this is a conversation you facilitate, so you can say no, but it strikes me over my time of working with kids and being around kids, there are a lot of kids who don't need to go to 4-year colleges. They just don't. They don't need to incur the debt that you're going to incur when you do it. Do you ever sit down? Do you ever have conversations with parents? I mean, I realize that's not your conversation to have, but do parents ask you about that? Or how do you approach that conversation?
Yeah, no, Bill, I absolutely concur with what you're saying. Not every student out there needs to go to college to be successful.
Right.
And as we know, again, as these price tags of these colleges continue to go up all the time, going into a huge amount of debt to get a degree can be detrimental to your health in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just really can. And so here's the other thing. I'm a big fan of a guy by the name of Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs.
Of course, yes.
And he's got a program out there that is all about helping to get people into the trades. And in fact, he has $1 million scholarship that he's put together to help fund people going into that, because we need people that are into carpentry and electrical and plumbing and HVAC and all that kind of stuff. Because if we don't get those people, we're all going to be paying through the nose down the road for those services, So I truly believe that mom and dad have got to be open to the fact that their son or daughter may not be college ready. They may not be college quality, for whatever number of reasons, but they could go to a trade school for 2 years and come out and make a boatload of money and change the world,
Oh no, I know plenty of craftsmen who've had great careers, who make 6 figures, who do well for themselves, provide for their families really well, and there is no shame, there is no disgrace in those careers whatsoever. Plus, you can't ship off a plumbing job and a carpentry job to another country, because that just doesn't work out that way. It just doesn't
you're so
work
right.
that way.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and again, the good news is we've got some great programs out there that can help students be successful in those lines of work. We just have to be willing to say, hey, it's okay to do that. I think some of it's happened in the high schools themselves, where it's college. Yeah. And yet, there was a time when, back back 40 years ago when I was in high school, when, there was woodworking, there was metalworking. I mean, there were these opportunities for kids to go through that kind of training. Unfortunately, a lot of that vocational stuff has slipped out of schools,
Yeah, no, it's very true. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed listening to the conversation. I did have some painful emotional flashbacks, but then this is an emotional podcast, so what I gotta say.
Right.
So, Christine, before we get out of here and I wrap things up, if people who are listening to this conversation, I would like to have a conversation with Christine about this or any other topic in terms of money, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way is to pop over to my website, which is my name, christineluken.com, if you're interested in coaching. We've also just recently opened the doors on the Wealthy Woman Book Club. So, ladies, if you want to increase your financial IQ and do it in a safe and fun environment, I welcome you to join us there.
Yeah, and is the promo up on your website?
Yeah, it is up.
It's great.
It's up great. And ready to go.
I would encourage you to hit that promo and give it a listen as well. Absolutely. The other thing you can do if you're listening to the podcast for the first time is really simple. Hit the follow button. Simple. Then you're a subscriber. That way, every time Christine produces a new episode of her podcast, you will be notified and you can listen. I'd also ask that if you find this podcast useful and interesting and helpful, tell people about it. Word of mouth is always welcome in the promotional world, if you will. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker, thanking you on behalf of Christine. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I want to remind you that you can go out today and make it a good day. And I hope that you do, because you have a choice. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. To get in touch, visit our website at www.christineluken.com or drop us a line at hello@christineluken.com. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Christine Luken. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your advisor, tax professional, or other qualified financial professional with any questions you may have regarding your personal finances.